A wild lynx stood at the doorstep of a man's cabin, her eyes filled with fear. In her mouth, she carried her dying cub. No growl, no attack, just a silent plea. What this man did next changed everything and left the world stunned forever. The cabin stood alone, hidden deep inside a quiet forest where humans rarely passed. Tall pine trees surrounded it like silent guards, and the only sounds were wind through leaves and distant birds. The man inside lived a simple, isolated life, far from cities and noise, believing nature preferred distance over closeness. That afternoon, he opened his wooden door expecting nothing more than fresh air. Instead, he froze. Just a few steps away stood the lynx, muscular, alert, wild. Instinct screamed danger. His heart pounded as his hands slowly lifted in defense. But something was different. The lynx didn't hiss. She didn't bare her teeth. Her golden eyes weren't filled with rage, but desperation. Gently, she lowered her cub onto the wooden porch. The small body barely moved, its breathing shallow and weak. In that moment, fear collided with something stronger. Compassion. And the man realized this was no ordinary encounter. It was a choice that could cost him everything, or change two lives forever. The man didn't move. Neither did the lynx. Time seemed to stretch between them, heavy and fragile. He could hear his own heartbeat pounding louder than the forest itself. One wrong step, one sudden sound, and everything could end in seconds. Up close, he saw details he hadn't noticed before. The lynx's fur was matted and dusty, her sides rising and falling fast. She was exhausted. Her cub lay limp on the wooden boards, its tiny chest struggling for each breath. One paw twitched weakly, then fell still. Fear told him to back away, to shut the door and protect himself. This was a wild predator, fast, powerful, unpredictable. Every instinct screamed danger. His mind raced through stories of attacks, warnings, headlines. But the lynx did something no one would expect. She stepped back, just one step, then another. She sat down, eyes never leaving her cub, then slowly lifted her gaze to the man. There was no threat in her posture, only waiting, watching, trusting. The forest seemed to hold its breath. In that silence, the man understood something extraordinary was happening. This wasn't an attack. This wasn't coincidence. This was a mother asking a stranger for help. And the weight of that realization settled heavily on his soul. The man swallowed hard, his eyes moving between the lynx and her fragile cub. He had no training for this, no plan, just a lifetime of instincts telling him that wild animals and humans were never meant to cross this line. Yet the cub's condition was impossible to ignore. Its breathing was shallow, uneven, as if each breath might be its last. One eye was half closed, its small body cold against the wooden boards. Whatever had happened, injury, illness, starvation, it was running out of time. The man's mind raced. If he reached forward, the lynx could attack in an instant. One leap, one strike. He would never see it coming. Fear tightened his chest. Then he noticed something else. The lynx hadn't moved closer. She hadn't growled or bared her teeth. She stayed where she was, tense but still, giving him space. It was as if she understood the risk too, and was willing to take it. Slowly, deliberately, the man knelt down. His hands trembled as he reached toward the cub, every muscle prepared to pull back. He whispered softly, not sure who he was speaking to, the cub, the lynx, or himself. In that fragile moment, fear loosened its grip. He chose compassion, and crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The man moved slowly, every motion deliberate, as if the air itself might shatter if he rushed. He wrapped his jacket around the cub, feeling how cold and light the small body was. Too light, the kind of weight that made his chest tighten with fear. He checked for wounds with careful fingers, finding scratches and swelling along the cub's side. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just enough to weaken a young life hanging by a thread. He warmed water inside the cabin and returned, kneeling again on the porch. Behind him, the lynx watched. Her muscles stayed coiled, ready to explode if needed. Her ears twitched at every sound, yet she did not interfere. She allowed his hands to touch what mattered most to her. That trust felt heavier than any threat. The man dabbed water onto the cub's mouth, gently rubbing its chest to stimulate breathing. Seconds stretched endlessly. Then, barely noticeable, the cub's chest rose a little stronger. A faint movement, a tiny sound. The man froze. The lynx stepped closer, eyes wide, breath sharp. Not in anger, but hope. The forest seemed to lean inward, as if witnessing something sacred. Life was still there, fragile, flickering, but refusing to disappear. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the cub's uneven breaths. Then, slowly, something changed. The tiny chest began to rise with more strength. The trembling eased. A weak but steady rhythm returned, as if life itself was finding its way back home. The man exhaled, realizing he had been holding his breath the entire time. He loosened the jacket slightly, watching carefully. The cub shifted, letting out a faint sound that barely rose above the forest hush. It was alive, still fighting. The lynx reacted instantly. She moved closer, lowering her head until her nose nearly touched her cub. A soft, unfamiliar sound escaped her throat. Not a growl, not a threat, but something gentle. Relief. Gratitude. Then, in a moment no one would believe without witnessing it, she did something unthinkable. She looked at the man and slowly lowered her head. No teeth. No warning. Just acknowledgement. The man felt a chill run through him. This was not fear. This was awe. A wild animal, guided by instinct, was offering something rare, trust. For a heartbeat, they shared that silent understanding. Two different worlds meeting without violence. And in that fragile space, everything changed forever. When the cub's breathing steadied, the man slowly stepped back. He knew his place in this story was ending. This moment was never meant to last. Some connections are brief, but unforgettable. The lynx gently lifted her cub, adjusting her grip with care only a mother could show. She paused at the edge of the porch, then turned back. Her golden eyes met the man's one last time. There was no fear left in them, no suspicion, only something quiet and profound. Then she disappeared into the trees. The forest closed around her, swallowing sound and movement, until there was nothing left but rustling leaves and fading light. The man stood alone again, his heart still racing, his hands trembling, not from danger, but from wonder. He returned inside, yet the cabin felt different now. Smaller, changed, as if the walls themselves understood what had just happened. Days passed. Life continued, but the memory never faded. Somewhere deep in that forest, a cub lived because a man chose compassion over fear, and a wild mother trusted the impossible. Moments like these remind us that humanity is not defined by power, but by empathy. Sometimes the most extraordinary miracles happen when we listen to a silent plea and answer it